Chapter 634. Although the vanquishing evil sword was not unsheathed, it already had the will to conquer the heavens. Yao Yen gently unsheathed the sword, and the sword aura cut through space and time. The third-ranked vanquishing evil sword had a special origin. It was said that the one who obtained this sword would obtain the great Tao of the sword. Just this move alone caused everyone to go crazy. There was only one thought in their minds: to obtain this sword. The experts on the fourth floor all nodded in praise. This divine sword was famous in this plane, and it was even famous in other planes. It was the favorite weapon of young kings. The sword was like its name, untamed and untamed. Ordinary people could not subdue it. The divine sword had a spirit, and it could abandon its master. Those who were not fated to obtain it would either be rich or a disaster. Although Yi Qinghan did not use the sword, he still wanted to buy it. On the third floor, a young man with an unrestrained appearance was tapping his fingers on the windowsill. He stared at the vanquishing evil sword without blinking. There was a faint smile on his face. His face was not handsome, but it was flawless. However, there was a faint heroic spirit and unruly aura. His evil smile hid his own stubbornness. He was already immortal. Although he looked ordinary, he was in accordance with the heavenly Tao. In terms of battle prowess, he should be stronger than Cairo. However, how much stronger could only be known when he made a move. Yi Qinghan glanced at him. When he saw the determination and sword intent in his eyes, his pupils shrank. He said to Cairo, "Who is he? He should be in the top 5 of the ranking, right?" "It's the 4th-ranked Xianyan Shui. He's evil but not evil. He stands in the middle and acts according to his heart. However, he won't kill the weak and likes to fight the strong. He's challenged all of the top 30 on the ranking list. Except for the top 3, he's won all of them. He loves the great Tao of snow, so he's said to hold a sword in one hand and think of the snow in the heart. When he attacks with his sword, snow will fall down. The light of the snow is invisible, making it impossible for people to dodge." "A bit what?" the divine bird asked curiously. Yi Qinghan was also very curious. He looked at Cairo. To put it nicely, he is a bit unrestrained and likes to play with experts. To put it bluntly, he is a bit like a divine bird. Cairo thought for a long time but could not think of a way to describe Xianyan Shui. He looked at the parrot and suddenly thought of using a comparison to describe Xianyan Shui's personality. "Bullshit. What do you mean by bluntly sounding like me? I am handsome, and unrestrained. I look at the heroes of the world. This is called wisdom. Don't speak nonsense if you don't understand," the divine bird angrily retorted. Slow shrugged and did not want to argue with the divine bird. He could not beat it or scold it, so he simply pretended not to hear it. Yi Qinghan smiled. With this comparison, he was able to understand Sierra Nixu's temperament. Sierra Nixu's temperament was similar to the parrot's, but he was different from the divine bird. The divine bird couldn't beat people and could only play tricks. Sierra Nixu, on the other hand, had the strength to play tricks on others. Xianyan Shui. Xie, and it was love at first sight. "I bid 180,000 high-grade divine crystals." Xianyan Shui's voice was low, gentle, and powerful. It echoed in the hall for a long time. "I bid 190,000. I bid 200,000. 230,000. The overlords of the third floor went crazy. Now, they had to raise the price so that the people on the 4th floor would feel it was a pity. Only then would they have a share. Sierra Nix's eyes flashed. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and leaned against the void without any support. He was a bit depressed. So many people were calling out the price at the same time, making him a bit confused. He suddenly snorted and said coldly, "So noisy, you're messing up my head. All of you shut up. I bid 300,000 high-grade divine crystals. I only brought so few high-grade divine crystals. Don't provoke this young master. If you provoke me..." Xianyan Shui flipped his hair and pretended to be cool. The female cultivators below screamed, completely ignoring the situation. He was ranked 4th on the wind cloud list. Apart from 3 heavens, he was the strongest. His battle prowess was definitely much stronger than some of the prefecture lords. Most importantly, he was young, rich, and unrestrained. Even when he threatened, Yao Yan only smiled faintly. She did not stop him. "What will happen if I provoke you?" Just when everyone thought that the dust had settled, a cold voice caused everyone on the 4th floor and below to shiver. It was as if they had fallen into an ice cave on a cold winter day. That kind of voice that could directly freeze people's hearts was extremely offensive. The people on the 4th floor looked down and saw an extremely unfamiliar young man at the front of the hall. No, he did not just appear. He had been there all along. It was just that no one paid attention to him. That person looked like he was standing at the front of the hall. This distance should not be much, and they should be able to see him clearly. However, when everyone looked at him, they could not see his face clearly. It was very blurry, and they could not even tell if he was a man or a woman. However, from the way he was dressed, it should be a man. Yi Qinghan also stood up and stood in front of the window. He narrowed his eyes and looked at that person. He was of medium height and had a slender figure. He was dressed in purple clothes, and his hair fell to his shoulders. His slender fingers did not show any signs of sword training. However, he was born with a pair of sword-wielding hands. Looking up, that pair of blurry faces seemed to exist in another space. They could not see through him at all. This was especially true for his eyes, which were as blurry as black holes. Almost all of the prefecture lords looked down, but the result was the same. They could not see through that layer of illusion. They could not see the person's face. Xian Yanxue frowned. This was the first time he had encountered such a person. He was familiar with the top 30 on the wind cloud list, and he was sure that this person was not any one of them. However, he could clearly sense that this person's battle prowess was definitely in the top 5. This person is very strange. I can't even recognize him. I can't see through his illusion either. Silo came to Yi Qinghan's side and said in a low voice. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed coldly. He formed a seal with his palms and circulated the power of the dragon. A golden light shot out from his eyes. The flames burned through the illusion and could see through everything. At this moment, his eyes were no longer the eyes of a human. They were more like the eyes of an ancient demon dragon. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan looked down at the person below again. He could see it so clearly. He did not look at the person's gender. Instead, he looked directly at the person's eyes. Those eyes were of different colors. One of them was blue, while the other was purple. A person with different eyes. Yi Qinghan and the person below looked at each other. Both of their eyes were filled with shock. A bolt of lightning flashed from each of their eyes. They collided in the air, tearing apart space and time. The ear-piercing sound caused many to cover their ears and scream. Some even bled from their orifices and collapsed to the ground, unable to get up. Chapter 635. Yi Qinghan's dragon eyes stared at the pair of strange eyes, and his body trembled. It was as if he had seen another world, and he could not shift his gaze away. The world in those eyes made him feel intoxicated, like a dream. Boom, 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 boom. His dragon blood boiled, and his dragon energy roared. Suddenly, Berserk let out a long roar in his mind, jolting Yi Qinghan awake. Yi Qinghan let out a breath of turbid air and narrowed his eyes at the person below. The person with strange eyes was also staring at him, his eyes filled with shock. He did not understand how Yi Qinghan could see through his disguise. This was a disguise personally set up by a superior god. You saw it clearly? Silo found it hard to believe. This kind of situation could only be seen on a superior god. Now, it actually appeared on an unfamiliar young man. And it's a woman. Have you heard of people with strange eyes in the mythological plane? A pair of eyes with 2 different colors. Yi Qinghan was shocked. He could not understand at all why a person's eyes were of different colors. Was this person a human? Silo shook his head. He was a native of the mythological plane, but he had never seen or even heard of people with strange eyes. The person with strange eyes was mainly focused on Yi Qinghan, forgetting to compete for the evil vanquishing sword. However, the others were attracted by the person with strange eyes, forgetting to bid as well. Only Xian Yanxue grinned evilly and kept staring at Yao Yan. Those eyes that could speak seemed to be saying, "Why aren't you announcing the deal?" Yao Yan seemed to be biased. After asking 3 times, she directly announced that the evil vanquishing sword was sold. It could have been sold for 500,000, but Xian Yanxue bought it for 300,000. Only then did the person with strange eyes react. He could not help but angrily glare at Yi Qinghan. If not for Yi Qinghan causing trouble and using his dragon eyes to see through his disguise, he would not have forgotten to bid for the evil vanquishing sword. Yi Qinghan also felt wronged. He only wanted to see why the person in front of him was so blurry, but he did not expect to discover such a shocking secret. This woman's background was absolutely terrifying. The person behind her must be a superior god, or even more terrifying. Xian Yanxue sheathed her sword and smiled at Yi Qinghan. She seemed to be thanking him, but it was impossible to tell from her evil eyes that she was thanking him. The divine bird had a look of disgust on its face. It always felt that this fellow's eyes were so annoying, making it uneasy. However, it did not know that its own eyes were even more annoying. Umph! A cold snort broke the silence of the auction house. The man with abnormal pupils glared at Yi Qinghan and transmitted his voice. "If you dare expose my identity, I'll break your bones one by one." Yi Qinghan shrugged his shoulders. Women were the hardest to please and could not be offended. He smiled kindly and sent an apologetic voice transmission. "Fairy, please don't be angry. I didn't mean to offend you. I will never reveal your identity." "Then what about my punishing evil sword? You have to compensate me with a divine sword of the same level." The man with abnormal pupils pouted. Although she looked a little cold, she was actually very simple-minded and did not have much experience. Yi Qinghan saw through the illusion and saw the face of the person with different pupils. This face seemed to have been carved by a supreme ancient god, and there was not a single blemish on it. This was especially true for those different colored pupils, which did not seem out of place at all. Instead, he felt that it was very beautiful. He thought to himself, "If we're talking about looks, she probably won't lose to my son. Her innate talent actually makes my hair stand on end. Those eyes are definitely on par with Medusa's eyes, able to kill without leaving a trace." Yi Qinghan was silent for a moment before replying, "I don't have a divine sword of the same level, but if you can provide me with the materials, I can forge one for you. It definitely won't lose to this divine sword. Moreover, you can choose its appearance according to your preference. Isn't it much better than the punishing evil sword? You don't even have a draft for bragging. It can be promoted to a mid-level divine weapon, and it's a top-grade one. Can you forge it?" The man with abnormal pupils snorted and ignored Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed. If he could rope in this man with abnormal pupils, he would not have to worry about the arena competition. He estimated that he would be able to wipe out the entire younger generation of God's organization, not leaving a single one alive. Thinking of this, Yi Qinghan transmitted his voice indifferently, "You'll know if I'm bragging or not. Perhaps I can really forge a divine sword that you like? Then let's try. If you can't forge it, I'll teach you a lesson." The man with abnormal pupils snorted. "Fellow Taoist, don't you feel uncomfortable sitting below and being the center of attention? If you don't mind, there are still some seats in the box. You can sit down and watch the auction. There are still many treasures later," Yi Qinghan said as he moved his finger. Whoosh! The man with abnormal pupils rose from the ground. There was no fluctuation of divine energy at all. He stepped on the air and appeared on the 4th floor, shocking everyone. This man's understanding of the Grand Tao had reached the peak. Although his cultivation level was a bit low, his true combat strength was definitely not inferior to Xian Yanxue, who was ranked 5th on the wind cloud list. Xian Yanxue rushed over and entered the box. Suddenly, there were 4 people ranked in the top 10 on the wind cloud list in the box. When the man with abnormal pupils saw that it was the arrogant Xian Yanxue, he wanted to beat him up, but Yi Qinghan pulled him back. "Fellow Taoists, please calm down. It's just a divine sword. Treasures belong to those who are fated to obtain it. Since fellow Taoist has obtained it, it means that he is fated to obtain it. Fellow Taoist, don't be so stubborn. I'll compensate you in a few months." Yi Qinghan acted as the peacemaker and separated the two. Xian Yanxue looked curiously at Yi Qinghan and Silo. He found that both of them were ranked in the top 10, but he had never seen them before. The divine bird also looked curiously at Xian Yanxue. Clearly, it was preparing to scam him again. "Hey, handsome, it's nice to meet you. This divine bird is the spirit-devouring divine parrot who is loved by all. I'm the myriad beast divine emperor who is known by the world as a treasure hunter. Are you interested in finding treasures with me and reaching the peak of the myth realm?" The divine bird said seriously. Xian Yanxue trembled. Looking at the divine bird, he couldn't help but say, "There's actually a divine creature more shameless than me in this world." The divine bird was stunned. He didn't expect Xian Yanxue to evaluate him like this. He even scolded himself. This pair of weirdos were really birds of a feather. When the man with abnormal pupils saw the divine bird, he was also surprised. However, he quickly restrained himself. In terms of rarity, was there anything rarer than the man with abnormal pupils? The bidding continued outside. The atmosphere in the room was strange. The auras of the four experts fluctuated and suppressed each other. Perhaps they were just subconsciously trying to suppress each other. None of them were willing to admit defeat. At this moment, Long Shui sneaked up to the fourth floor. She wanted to see what would happen when the four experts squeezed into a room. She tiptoed and opened the door. Just as she was about to enter, she was sent flying by the four terrifying auras inside. Long Shui screamed miserably. She didn't even have time to resist before she was smashed into the hall. No matter how strong she was still a lower god. However, the four experts here were all middle god priests. Moreover, they were peak existences among their peers. Schwa. Xian Yanshua's reaction was very fast. He was at the door. His figure flashed and he directly hugged Long Shui. His body spun in the air and he jumped up. Chapter 636. Long Shui was stunned. She looked up at Xian Yanshue's unruly smile, and her heart raced. Thump, thump, thump. Her twin peaks were the most beautiful scenery in the world. Xian Yanxue laughed evilly and deliberately brushed his hand over her body. Long Shui trembled, and she fell into Xian Yanshue's arms. She couldn't use any strength, and it was as if her godhead had been imprisoned. Long Shui's skin was as white as snow, and she was Xian Yanshue's type. He couldn't help but want to tease Long Shui. His fingertips moved slightly, and Long Shui trembled. Xian Yanxue carried Long Shui back to the room. He didn't look at other people's expressions as if the room was his. "Don't stand on ceremony. Sit wherever you want." Xian Yanxue gestured for the three to sit down and put Long Shui beside him. Long Shui stayed where she was, not knowing if she should leave or stay. With Long Shui in the room, her cultivation was too low, and she couldn't withstand the pressure of the four experts. The four of them quieted down and stopped fighting. Thump, thump, thump. The room was so quiet that one could hear Long Shui's heartbeat. She kept her head down and didn't dare to make a sound. The next item is a grade 13 material called Purple God Iron Essence. If you want to refine a grade 13 material, you'll need a divine flame above grade 13. There aren't many people in the entire mythological plane who can refine it, so it's very valuable. Unfortunately, it's very cheap, so the starting price is 50 million mid-grade Purple God Iron Essence. Each bid can't be lower than 1 million mid-grade Purple God Iron Essence, Yao Yen said. 50 million mid-grade Purple God Iron Essence wasn't high. A grade 13 material wasn't easy to find. It was just that very few people could use it, which was why the price was so low. Everyone fell silent. They spent so much mid-grade Purple God Iron Essence, but they couldn't use it. Even though they knew it was a treasure, no one was interested. However, the experts on the fourth floor were still willing to collect it. 50 million mid-grade Purple God Iron Essence was nothing to them. 51 million. "If no one wants it, I'll take it," Man Who said. "Since Brother Man likes it, I'll bid 53 million mid-grade Purple God Iron Essence." The Desolate God College's Grand Venerable Origin also began to bid, raising the price to 2 million in one go. A few million was nothing to them. 60 million mid-grade Purple God Iron Essence. A cold voice suddenly came out from private room 52. It was hard to tell if it was a male or a female. The voice had been specially modified to be ear-piercing. Long Shui's complexion turned ugly. She was unable to adapt to this sound. Yi Qinghan frowned as he looked at the man with abnormal pupils. He whispered, "Fellow Taoist, why did you have to change your voice like this? Can't we talk nicely?" In fact, let alone Long Shui, even Silo, Xianyangsu, and the others felt that this sound was strange. It was like ice blades were tearing at their skin. It was unbearable. The other pupiled woman's body was hidden in a loose robe, only revealing her face. Yi Qinghan really couldn't understand what this woman was trying to hide. The man with different pupils also felt that his changed voice was a bit too frightening. He coughed dryly and changed his voice again, saying in a low voice, 60 million middle stage. 60 million middle grade was not a small amount. If converted to upper grade, it would be 60,000 upper grade. Using 60,000 upper grade to collect a useless material was really a waste. When God's organization saw that the voice came from Yi Qinghan's room, they deliberately raised the price to 63 million. The man with different pupils' gaze turned cold. He raised the price by another 2 million, raising the price to 65 million. Yi Qinghan looked at the woman with different pupils in shock. He discovered that this woman was the real tycoon. In order to obtain a Tier 13 material, she actually wasted so many middle-grade materials. This amount of middle-grade materials was enough for her to raise an army. The man behind Yao Zilong wanted to continue raising the price but was stopped by Yao Zilong. With such a high price, if the other party did not want it, God's organization would be the unlucky one. Finally, the woman with different pupils obtained the purple god iron essence and directly threw it to Yi Qinghan. She said in a muffled voice, "But you said that you would help me forge a sword of the same level. I will look for other materials. You keep this first." Yi Qinghan was so shocked that he could not close his mouth. This woman was too strange. If he were to calcine a Tier 13 material, it would take him at least half a year to melt it. He was not a professional blacksmith. How could he use half a year to melt this purple god iron essence without any rest? However, Yi Qinghan still accepted the godly iron essence. In order to cooperate with this woman to deal with God's organization, he did not hesitate to endure humiliation. The next few treasures were suitable for lower god worship and were all top quality. They were all bought by Yi Qinghan. However, because God's organization deliberately raised the price, he lost a lot of god crystals. However, Yi Qinghan did not care. If God's organization could cheat him of his god crystals, he could cheat them back twice as much. Sure enough, Yi Qinghan seized the opportunity. In order to buy a godly stab technique, God's organization and Yi Qinghan went through a fierce bidding war. The price was forcefully raised from 3 million to 100 million. The divine bird provoked God's organization again, but God's organization did not let go. After the price reached 100 million, Yi Qinghan decisively gave up. God's organization instantly spat out 10 times the amount of god crystals that they had cheated from Yi Qinghan. God's organization became more and more furious. Yi Qinghan and the divine bird had gone too far. If they did not bid, they would insult them. If they bid, they would give up. They were in a dilemma. Yi Qinghan, don't go too far. Yao Zilong angrily rebuked from afar. This is just the beginning. Since you are the ones who started this fight, I will decide when to end it. Yi Qinghan coldly said, Good. Today I will make you pay the price. Yao Zilong was furious. No one had ever dared to challenge God's organization's prestige. However, Yi Qinghan had repeatedly provoked them. He deserved to die. Same to you. Yi Qinghan coldly replied. The more Yi Qinghan and God's organization fought, the happier Yao Yan was. Without battle energy, how could the auction house make money? Yi Qinghan had cheated God's organization of 100 million god crystals. This amount of god crystals was enough to form a large army. God's organization wanted to cheat Yi Qinghan, but they did not expect to be cheated by Yi Qinghan. The next item to be auctioned is 1 million god crystals. I bid 10 million. Yao Zilong coldly said. I bid 20 million. Yi Qinghan was not to be outdone. 30 million. Yao Zilong continued to bid. He glared at Yi Qinghan, thinking that he would give up if Yi Qinghan continued to bid. I don't want it anymore. Yi Qinghan unexpectedly gave up. Everyone. Yao Zilong's face turned purple. He gritted his teeth, unable to suppress his anger any longer. Yi Qinghan, on the other hand, was very calm. He hoped that Yao Zilong would make a move here today and join forces with the experts of the Western garrison to suppress God's organization's arrogance. Killing a few of the prefecture lords first would make things easier for the insane prefecture in the future. Think of a way to enrage them and make them attack. Yi Qinghan gave the divine bird a mission and decided to start a chaotic battle. It would be best if they could kill Yao Zilong. Even if they could not kill him, they would at least make him lose a layer of skin. Tisk. It's easy to make them angry, Xian Yanxue suddenly said, her eyes gleaming. Chapter 637. Yi Qinghan was quite surprised that Xie Nixu would take the initiative to scam God's organization. Could it be that he didn't like God's organization? The divine bird was immediately interested. Recently, it had wanted to scam Tian Ke Divine College and God's organization the most. However, it wasn't strong enough. How? The divine bird asked curiously. I have a divine stone here. If I auction it, God's organization will definitely be interested. Xie Nixu waved his hand and a fingernail-sized stone appeared. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed. He was very surprised. This stone was actually a primal chaos source. However, it was much smaller than the one in his hand. Those who knew how to use it would understand the value of this stone. The energy inside was almost inexhaustible. Primal chaos source. Yi Qinghan blurted out. Xie Nixu was even more surprised. After he obtained this divine stone, he had never told anyone. Even the older generation of his family didn't know about it. He had consulted many appraisers, but none of them could recognize the origin of this stone. Yi Qinghan actually recognized it at a glance. He couldn't believe it. Fellow Taoist, this divine stone is too valuable. If you auction it, you will be giving it to God's organization. Yi Qinghan kindly reminded him. I know the value of this stone. Unfortunately, I have used up all the energy inside. There is not much left, and it is attached to the surface. However, from the outside, it is still intact. As long as I tell the appraisers about the origin of this stone, God's organization will give me the vanquishing evil sword for free. Xie Nixu laughed evilly. Scum! The divine bird and the man with different pupils said in unison. Xie Nixu didn't care. He raised his eyebrows and said, use it to the best of your ability. There is still a lot of energy in this stone. It can support at least 15 all-out attacks from a prefecture master. Anyway, I have no use for it. If I give it to God's organization, it might save their lives in a critical moment. If Yi Qinghan didn't have a primal chaos divine source of his own, he might have believed it as well. Who knew how much energy that primal chaos divine source contained? The fact that it could only sustain a few attacks from the manor head showed just how many times Xian Yanxue had used it. Anyway, you guys don't like them, and I don't like them either. What's the harm in tricking them once? Xian Yanxue was a little embarrassed by the disdainful gazes of these people and hurriedly quibbled. At most, I'll sell them the method to use the divine essence's energy. Who knows, they might have a chance to obtain another divine essence in the future. Xian Yanxue smiled. Yi Qinghan thought about how God's organization had spent a lot of money to buy a piece of useless rock. They still had a method that they didn't have a chance to use. Suddenly he grinned. The primal chaos divine source wasn't easy to find. Otherwise, all the appraisers in the world would have recognized it. Clearly, there weren't many mythical planes, and Yi Qinghan was probably the only one left. When they buy it, you can tell them that it's a piece of useless rock. They'll definitely explode with anger. When the time comes, they won't be able to resist the urge to make a move at the auction house. Then, they won't just offend you. They'll definitely offend the people of the Holy Dragon Divine Kingdom. We can take the opportunity to gang up on them. Even if we can't kill Yao Zilong, we can at least make him lose a few pieces of flesh, right? Xian Yanxue suggested. Yi Qinghan nodded and agreed to Xian Yanshue's suggestion. This matter had nothing to do with him, so he couldn't drag Xian Yanxue into it. Long Shui and the man with different pupils felt a chill run down their spines. They looked at Yi Qinghan and Xian Yanxue with vigilance. These two people were too despicable. They had cheated God's organization. If this rock had enough energy, it would be worth at least 1 million top-grade divine crystals. God's organization would definitely be furious if they wasted so many divine crystals to buy a piece of useless rock. Actually, I don't think it's necessary to expose them on the spot. Let them take it back and offer it to the elders of God's organization. When the elders find out, Yao Zilong and the others will be in trouble. We can kill them with a borrowed knife. It's also very good to let them kill each other. The divine bird was even more despicable. It looked at Yi Qinghan and Xian Yanxue and said proudly. Yi Qinghan and Xian Yanxue immediately nodded. Then, they looked at Long Shui and the man with different pupils at the same time. First, they had to make sure that these two wouldn't inform God's organization. At this moment, how could Long Shui possibly inform God's organization? Her mind was filled with the image of Xian Yanxue saving her. She was completely stunned. The man with different pupils snorted and said coldly, "I won't interfere in the matters between you two." Hearing this, Xian Yanxue immediately ran down and pulled Sima Sun into a private room. He took out the primal chaos divine source and said with a smile, "Mr. Sima, do you know what this is?" Sima Sun raised his eyebrows. He had helped Xian Yanxue identify it once before, but he didn't recognize it. Seeing Xian Yanxue take it out again, he said unhappily, "You want to make things difficult for me again? Last time, you cheated me of 100,000 top-grade divine crystals. I won't fall for it this time." Xian Yanxue immediately said seriously, "Do I look like that kind of person? This time, I came to find out the origin of this rock. I know that you are an appraiser and must be very curious about the origin of this thing, so I came here to tell you. You can't accuse me wrongly. Also, my method is too poor. I can't use a large amount of the energy inside, so I can only ask you to help me sell it. I'll give you 10% of the commission." "Oh? What is this?" This old man has never seen this thing before. Sima Sun asked curiously. Although he knew that Xian Yanshue's words couldn't be trusted, his thirst for knowledge was very abnormal. This is called the Primal Chaos Divine Source. It is a supreme treasure condensed from the purest divine energy in the world. It is inexhaustible. Just this small piece, if it explodes, can destroy 10 West Garrison prefectures. Xian Yanxue said in a deep voice. This sentence was obviously true. Xian Yanxue wasn't lying to Sima Sun. What? This is the Primal Chaos Divine Source? No wonder this old man felt that this thing stored an endless amount of energy. How does this thing extract energy from it? Since you have learned how to use it, why are you selling it? Sima Sun was a little suspicious of Xian Yanshue's intentions. This fellow was famous in the mythological plane for being a scammer. I have studied it for over 1,000 years, and even now, I can only extract a trace of its energy. After all, my wisdom is limited. If I can sell it to a large organization, they might be able to research a better way to use it. I can't delay the development of the mythological plane just because of my own selfish desires, right? Xian Yanshue's serious expression made it impossible for anyone to doubt his intentions. His glorious and imposing figure instantly rose in Sima Sun's heart. He was as great as a god. I need to confirm that your method can really extract energy from it. Only then can I confirm that it is the Primal Chaos Divine Source. Only then can I price it. Sima Sun had unknowingly fallen into Xian Yanshue's trap. Xian Yanxue had changed some of his methods. Originally, he could extract a large amount of energy from the Primal Chaos Divine Source, but now he could only extract a trace of energy at a time. It was impossible to use up all the energy in a short period of time. He needed to study it slowly. By the time he figured out the method, the Primal Chaos Divine Source would have already changed hands. Sima Sun used Xian Yanshue's method to extract a trace of energy. He was immediately shocked. This pure divine power was indeed the pure energy from when the primal chaos divine source was first created. If there really was a large amount of primal chaos divine source, it would be worth more than 1,000,000 high-grade divine stones. Can I buy this divine stone through an internal transaction? Sima Sun was also greedy. He really wanted to buy this divine source for cultivation. Xian Yanxue rolled his eyes. This divine stone was specially used to trick God's organization. If he sold it to Sima Sun, wouldn't Sima Sun kill him? I want to auction it, and you have to promise not to tell anyone about me. Also, you are not sure if the primal chaos divine source is really inexhaustible. So, I suggest that when you auction it, it is best to say in advance that you cannot guarantee the amount of energy inside. So, when auctioning this divine source, there will be no starting price. Once someone buys it, the auction house will not be responsible, Xian Yanxue warned. In fact, he didn't need to remind Sima Sun. However, he still had some friendship with Sima Sun, and he really didn't want to lose his reputation. Sima Sun was somewhat suspicious of Xian Yanshue's intentions. He was even more suspicious of how much energy was left in the divine source. Are you here to trick me? Sima Sun asked doubtfully. When Xian Yanxue heard this, she immediately grabbed the divine source and said unhappily, "You old bastard, I was kind enough to tell you the origin and effects of this divine stone. You can't learn this from books, and you don't want to ruin your reputation because of a legendary divine stone. But you keep doubting me. I'm not selling it. I'd rather throw it away than sell it." Xian Yanxue loosened the reins and was about to leave. No, little friend Yanxue, don't be angry. This old man misunderstood. Leave the divine stone, and I will auction it. Sima Sun suddenly felt embarrassed. He felt that he had misunderstood a good person. Xian Yanxue pretended to be unhappy, but in fact, he was very happy. He pretended to be angry and said, "At least you know what's good for you. Wrap this divine source up and don't use the energy inside, so it won't affect the price. Also, you can auction it tomorrow. Take advantage of this opportunity to advertise it. Have people prepare divine crystals. I hope you can sell it for a good price. Then, 10% commission will be enough to make up for the 100,000 high-grade divine crystals you lost to me last time." Sima Sun felt that it was a pity and wanted to keep the divine source for himself, but Xian Yanxue didn't agree. He could only shake his head and leave. Xian Yanxue took a detour and returned to private room 52. He had a creepy smile on his face. Sure enough, Sima Sun walked to the auction stage and said calmly, "Today's auction is over. However, tomorrow, this old man will personally sell the first supreme treasure. Today, I will introduce the origin of this supreme treasure. I hope everyone will be prepared. Don't ruin this opportunity." Everyone was in an uproar. Sima Sun was the most powerful treasure appraiser in the divine nation. Normally, no matter how powerful a divine artifact was, he wouldn't auction it personally. The next item is the Primal Chaos Divine Source. This item was born when the Primal Chaos was first created. According to legends, the divine power used by the Primal Chaos gods was the Primal Chaos Divine Source, not the high-grade divine crystals of today. The Primal Chaos Divine Source is an existence that surpasses the top-grade divine crystals. The energy stored inside can be described as inexhaustible. Now, the auction house has received a commission from a fellow Taoist to auction a fingernail-sized divine source. As for the specific details, this old man will personally explain it tomorrow, Sima Sun said in a deep voice. There was a deathly silence in the auction house. Everyone was shocked by this news. In this mythological dimension where resources were scarce, there were probably only a few pieces of top-grade god crystals. Someone was actually willing to auction off the Primal Chaos Divinity Source, which surpassed top-grade god crystals. How extravagant! However, this old man has to say in advance that this is the first piece of Primal Chaos Divine Source to appear in the world. This old man has confirmed that it is indeed the Primal Chaos Divine Source. As for how much energy is left inside it and where its true value is, this old man is not sure. You can only gamble. If you gamble correctly, you will have the power to control the world. If you gamble wrongly, you will be responsible. However, this old man wanted to trade this divine stone internally, but was rejected by the person who entrusted it. That's all I have to say. You can consider it yourselves. The auction house will not be responsible for it. Chapter 638. The news of the primal chaos divinity source's appearance instantly alerted all the high god priests, and they all issued orders to obtain the primal chaos divinity source no matter what. Even the auction house was participating in the auction. With the West Garrison Prefecture's auction house participating in the auction, no one doubted the authenticity of the primal chaos divinity source, unless Sima Sun was mistaken. However, such a situation was negligible, and he would not use his reputation to deceive others. For an appraiser like Sima Sun, his reputation was more important than his life. How could he sacrifice his reputation for money? The auction became more and more mysterious, and more experts were alarmed. More and more prefecture masters arrived, and in the end, even the medium god priests were chased out, let alone the lower god priests. The auction came to a halt. Silo felt his scalp go numb. It had only been one night, and at least 500 prefecture masters had arrived. More than 30 high god priests had arrived, and some disciples of the high god priests had come out of seclusion and headed straight for the West Garrison Prefecture. Nothing will happen, right? Silo asked in a hoarse voice. What can happen? Just don't betray me. I've reminded Sima Sun that this is the first time the primal chaos divinity source is being auctioned, and I don't know how much energy it contains. It's like gambling on stones, and it's all about luck. What does it have to do with me? Xian Yanxue raised her eyebrows, but she was also feeling uneasy. If the truth about the primal chaos divinity source was exposed, and Sima Sun couldn't withstand the pressure from the high god priests, he would betray her. That's right. Just say that we just got it, and we didn't set the price. If they are willing to buy it, they will have to take responsibility, the divine bird agreed. Time flew by, and the representatives of the high god priests had all arrived. There were many strangers, and there were also quite a number of young people, both male and female. The top 20 on the ranking board were all present, except for the top 3. However, there were some unfamiliar young people, and it seemed that their battle prowess surpassed some of the people on the ranking board. It seemed that there were quite a number of geniuses like those with different pupils. Interesting, I didn't expect a piece of useless stone to attract so many experts. 23 representatives of the high gods, 3 divine kingdoms, 3 divine academies, and God's organization are all here. 72 overlords, TSK. I'm done here. This primal chaos divinity source is yours. No matter how many divinity crystals it is sold, you can take it, but you have to be my scapegoat, okay? Xian Yanxue was frightened. This primal chaos divinity source was chaos divinity source. Xian Yanshue's, said Xian Yanshue's was divinity source. Yi divinity source. Was Xia. Xia divinities divinity source divinity source chaos divinity source divinity. I only sold it to help you. Otherwise, I could use it a few more times. Xian Yanxue said helplessly. Nonsense, you sold it to play with God's organization. Let's be honest. Promise me something and I will take the blame for you. If not, just stay here and don't think about going anywhere. When the time comes, we will take the blame together, said Yi Qinghan indifferently. What is it? Tell me. Xian Yanxue felt that she had fallen into a trap. Not only did she have to waste her primal chaos divinity source, but she also had to help Yi Qinghan. You should have heard. Help me fight an arena match. You are ranked 4th on the world ranking list. Yang Ru, who is ranked 5th, should be helping me as well. I believe that there is no one in God's organization who can threaten you. If you agree, I will agree. If you don't, then sit down, Yi Qinghan said calmly. Xian Yanxue was speechless. Sure enough, Yi Qinghan was here for this. She could not help but say helplessly, you underestimate the world too much. Everyone knows about the world ranking list, but they don't know that the elite list is where the heroes gather. There are many youths in God's organization who are on par with me. If we fight, who knows who will win? In that case, I need your help even more. Yi Qinghan stared at Xian Yanxue. This person was a member of the upper echelons. There were many things that Yi Qinghan could not investigate. The next morning, Sima Sun personally auctioned the primal chaos divinity source and took it out for all the gods to see. He also concealed how he used the energy inside. Although he could only use a trace of it, the pure primal chaos divinity source was very obvious. This old man will only say this once. This auction has nothing to do with the auction house. Someone sent it here. We are only in charge of selling it. If there is any problem after you buy it, don't come to the auction house. If you can't make a promise, then withdraw from the auction. This old man will not make things difficult for you. Sima Sun felt that there was something wrong with this stone, but he could not pinpoint where the problem was. He could only say the ugly words first. Once it was sold, it would have nothing to do with him. Many experts had brought along their appraisers. They were all top-tier appraisers, and they stared at the primal chaos divinity source in Sima Sun's hand. They could feel the energy Sima Sun was using from the primal chaos divinity source. They nodded and said, "It does look like the legendary primal chaos divinity source. However, this item has never appeared before. Only the primal chaos divinity gods and primal chaos divinity source can use it. I'm not sure of its value." With the words of these appraisers, everyone swore that once they bought it, they would not look for Sima Sun, no matter how much the divinity source was worth. The auction began, and the various experts began to display their domineering auras. The first bid was 300,000 high-grade divinity crystals. There was no need to set a base price. 500,000, 800,000, high-grade, 1 million. In less than 10 rounds, the price had risen above 1 million. Most of the overlords were eliminated. Only the 3 divine kingdoms, the 3 god colleges, and some representatives of God's organization were still fighting over it. After 1 million, no one could be willful anymore. 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, until the price rose to 1,100,000. The 3 divine kingdoms were eliminated. Divine kingdoms were not like the god colleges, God's organization, and God's organization. They had huge empires that needed to be supported by a large treasury. If the treasury was empty, the divine kingdoms would be weakened and in danger. Soon, Skybreaker Xinyuan was eliminated, and the price rose to 1,150,000. Yi Qinghan's fingers trembled. He looked at Xianyan Shui, who was in a daze. He calmly reminded her, "The transaction is about to be completed. Have you made your choice? Are you going to help me fight in the arena or take the blame yourself?" "I'll help you fight in the arena." Xianyan Shui gritted her teeth. She was not alone. She had a huge family behind her. Making a fool of a huge organization in front of everyone, and with a god's organization, she would not have a good ending. The Wilderness God Academy was the wealthiest, and it was the only academy that could stand shoulder to shoulder with God's organization. Both sides had eliminated everyone else, and neither side was willing to give up. However, Yi Qinghan kindly reminded Western Garrison Liege Lord to stop bidding. As for whether or not the Wilderness God Academy would stop bidding, that was none of his business. Western Garrison Liege Lord personally sent a voice transmission to Long Shan, and Long Shan went to find someone from the Wilderness God College. In the end, the Wilderness God College gave up, and God's organization spent 1,200,000 high-grade divinity crystals to obtain the waste stone. Yi Qinghan and the others were laughing so hard that their stomachs were twitching. They took the high-grade divinity crystals and left the auction house. Staying behind at this time would be suicide. Chapter 639. Now that Yao Zilong and the others had obtained the primal chaos source, how could they be in the mood to snatch Yi Qinghan's dragon bloodline? It was already good enough that no one was looking for trouble with them. Therefore, they led a large group of experts to escort the primal chaos source to God Organization's headquarters. Yi Qinghan's expenses for the next few days were all covered by God Organization. At this moment, he did not want to stay in the West Garrison Prefecture. When God Organization reacted, they would definitely blame this on Yi Qinghan. Even if there was no evidence, they would still vent their anger. Their great elder will definitely personally question Sima Sun, and I will take responsibility for this. However, they don't have a valid reason to do so, so they will definitely gather the strongest of the younger generation of God's organization to fight in the arena. Therefore, I will have to rely on you for the arena matches. Yi Qinghan looked at Xian Yanxue and the others. Even Qin Lang and the person with different pupils had been pulled over. In order to win over the person with different pupils, Yi Qinghan had even promised that after the arena competition, he would definitely forge a divine sword comparable to the banishing evil sword and give it to her. When Yi Qinghan left the West Garrison Prefecture, he sent a message to the Dragon Nest. He learned that Yang Ru had agreed to help, but in exchange for the great Nirvana sword art. As for the Crown Prince of the Holy Dragon Divine Kingdom, he did not ask for anything in return. When the group returned to the Wild Garrison Prefecture, they received a message from the Mad God Saber King. God Organization has issued a God-slaying order. Be prepared. The God-slaying order was the highest level of God Organization's bounty order. Even Silo was only an ordinary bounty order. Even so, Silo didn't dare to reveal his true face. He was living in fear. From this, one could see how terrifying God Organization's God-slaying order was. Is there something wrong with God Organization's head? Why are they targeting me? Yi Qinghan was puzzled. He did not understand. God Organization does not have many territories and cannot start a war with the three divine kingdoms. Therefore, they want to take all the territories that do not belong to the three divine kingdoms. This is not targeting you, but all the rising forces. Unless you choose to submit to God Organization, Xian Yanxue said indifferently. The three divine kingdoms do not care? Yi Qinghan frowned. How many innocent people had God Organization killed in order to fight for territories? Care? What are you going to do? The number of prefecture lords in God's organization is equivalent to the total number of prefecture lords in the three divine kingdoms. Some of the divine kingdom prefecture lords have even joined God's organization. God's organization is very complicated, and the upper echelons of the three divinity institutes might have joined God's organization. One day, they might even be able to break through your insane prefecture. When that happens, you won't even know how you died. Xian Yanshue's voice was filled with disgust. She recalled what her ancestor had told her about the rise of her family. She said coldly, "When my evil faction had just risen, our three ancestors were all prefecture lords. However, two of them were crippled by God's organization. In the end, if one of them hadn't broken through to become a superior god at the last moment, my Shi family would have been wiped out." Yi Qinghan fell silent. Since Yi Qinghan wanted to snatch territory, then he should seize the opportunity to take over Tai Zhan's territory. If Kuang Fu wanted to develop, they needed territory and resources. The elites of the inner sect of Kuang Fu had all gone into seclusion. Yao Can took out almost all of his divine herbs and gave them to the people of the inner sect. If they wanted to participate in the competition, they had to be at the level of a medium god priest. If they didn't, they would be courting death. But Xian Yanxue knew that just becoming a medium god priest wasn't enough. She had to be an extreme medium god priest. Otherwise, she wouldn't even be able to withstand a single blow and would die. 3 days later, Yang Ru and the Dragon Crown Prince arrived at Kuang Fu and went into seclusion. Yi Qinghan had provided a large number of divine herbs, and Yao Can had specially created them. But as the competition drew closer, something strange happened in Kuang Fu's territory. A captain of Lolan's blade died in the camp. Then, a few Kiliarchs died one after another. Everyone in Kuang Fu was in danger. Yi Qinghan's killing intent surged. He went to the camp to take a look and saw that the corpses had all been killed with a single blow. Their godheads had also been taken. Xian Yanxue removed the sword wound and quickly confirmed it. She said in a low voice, "It was Lin Yi. It's fine if he's only killing Kiliarchs and major commanders, but if he attacks your ordinary soldiers or civilians, the insane manor will fall apart. You have to find him as soon as possible. At the very least, you have to force him away." Yi Qinghan was furious. His eyes glinted coldly, and his ruthless aura soared into the clouds. He said hoarsely, "I will make you regret entering Kuang Fu's territory. Mobilize Lolan's blade and the Steel Dragon army. Increase the patrols. Send 10,000 people to search the various inns. As long as it's a stranger, check them out. The Lulan army and the Steel Dragon army were mobilized. A tense atmosphere spread through Guangfu. Everyone was in a state of panic. Even the lesser god priests hid in their homes. That night, Lin Yi seemed to have angered Yi Qinghan. He killed 2 groups of people in a row, then disappeared without a trace. There was no trace of him at all. More than 100 corpses were strewn across the streets. Lin Yi had actually killed Guangfu's soldiers on the streets. Huff, huff, huff. Yi Qinghan closed his eyes and breathed out a few mouthfuls of turbid air. He couldn't control his emotions. The next day, Xian Yanxue hid in an army and patrolled the streets. They could only hope that Lin Yi was unlucky enough to attack this army. Unfortunately, Lin Yi missed Xian Yanxue and instead assassinated more than a dozen civilians and shop owners. The entire Guangfu's territory was thrown into chaos. Many people went to the Guangfu's residence to petition for the culprit to be found. The disaster had only just begun. If Lin Yi attacked the civilians, Guangfu would soon be forced to fall apart. Emperor Yi was alarmed and came out of seclusion. Looking at the corpses, his eyes were filled with anger. However, there was nothing he could do about these assassins. People like Yan Yunbei and Zifei came and went without a trace. Just relying on strength wasn't enough to catch them. Seeing Yi Qinghan's helplessness, the other-eyed man walked over. Looking at the corpses of the civilians and the crying children, he couldn't help but feel anger. A mighty extreme mid-level almighty, and an assassin at that, actually dared to attack ordinary sovereigns. This was simply too much. Boring assassin. Let's see if you can dodge my soul-chasing technique. The other-eyed man pressed 2 fingers on his temples, and his eyes pierced through the void. He then continuously formed hand seals, and it was as if time and space were reversing. The traces of Lin Ye's killing of civilians slowly appeared, becoming clearer and clearer. He could even see Lin Ye's face. Xian Yanxue was shocked, and Yi Qinghan was even more shocked. This kind of secret technique was simply heaven-defying. Soul Shi, Soul Shi, Soul Shi, Wind Shi, Moon Shi, Guide Shi, God guide my spirit, chase soul 10,000 miles. 2 different colors shot out from the other-eyed man's eyes. It was actually so enchanting at night. Fortunately, there was only Yi Qinghan, Emperor Yi, and Xian Yanxue here. Otherwise, it would really be frightening. Lin Ye's traces disappeared. Yi Qinghan couldn't see it, Emperor Yi couldn't see it, and Xian Yanxue couldn't see it either. However, the other-eyed man could see it clearly. His figure flashed and he rushed out. Follow him. Yi Qinghan, Emperor Yi, and the other 2 formed a triangle and followed the person with other pupils as they charged out. Chapter 640. The eyes of the person with different pupils were truly terrifying. Things that had already happened should have disappeared without a trace, but in her eyes, it seemed to have happened again. The route that Lin Yi took last night was found by the person with different pupils. The person with different pupils led Yi Qinghan and the others to follow. The night was as dark as ink, so dark that even the full moon seemed to be able to sense it. Now was the best time to kill, so everyone hid behind the thick clouds. The territory of the dragon cavalry was filled with an austere aura. Xia Qiyue was alarmed by the gloomy aura and personally came out to patrol. The streets were empty, like a desolate ghost town. A cold wind blew, making people's hair stand on end. If this situation continued for 10 days, the crazy manor would face collapse. No one wanted to live in a situation where they could be assassinated at any time. A mournful scream broke the silence of the night. Xia Qiyue led an elite team to the residential area. Everyone was awakened. They opened their windows and saw the dragon cavalry galloping through the streets. A cold wind blew, and the thick smell of blood was nauseating. Whoosh! A black shadow streaked across the night sky and left again. In less than half an incense stick's worth of time, Xia Qiyue led the army and rushed to a large family. The entire family was slaughtered. Not a single chicken or dog was spared. From the gods to the babies, even the dogs were killed. A line of small words was painted on the wall with blood. Those who do not leave the crazy manor's territory kill. None. Amnesty. Xia Qiyu took a deep breath. She knew this family and had a good relationship with them. They often helped the dragon cavalry. Who would have thought that they would be slaughtered tonight? Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 4 figures descended. The person with different pupils only glanced at them briefly before disappearing into the darkness. Yi Qinghan looked at the corpses on the ground and the words on the wall. He was furious. He said to Emperor Yi, "Son, stay here and help take care of this. Tonight's matter can't be hidden from the people in the territory. Calm them down. I'll go and catch Lin Yi." Yi Qinghan said and then streaked through the clouds with Xianyan Xue, speeding up. In order to make the crazy manor lose without a fight, God's organization chose to use such a despicable action. They had touched Yi Qinghan's bottom line. God's organization, you are the one who started this war. Yi Qinghan was enraged. If God's organization had discovered that the mana was fake and wanted to take revenge, he could still understand. But now, they had actually attacked the crazed manor's army, civilians, and families without any warning. They had even threatened the crazed manor and the other families with the threat of annihilation. This was too despicable. At the foot of a mountain range in front of them, there was a small troop of dragon cavalry stationed there. There were roughly 300 people, all of them at the emperor level. There were 3 lower god priests. At this moment, they were being careful and didn't dare to be careless. A black figure stealthily appeared and snuck into the tent. Just as he was about to raise his sword to kill, 3 terrifying auras enveloped this place. Yi Qinghan and Xianyan Xue simultaneously controlled the surroundings, turning the surrounding 1,000 meters into a prison. With a wave of her hand, the person with different pupils sent most of the soldiers out of the prison domain. Yi Qinghan, Xianyan Xue, and Xianyan Xue descended and looked down at the camp. Their gazes locked onto Lin Ye's tent. With a surge of will, Yi Qinghan removed all the tents in the domain, leaving only that one tent. "Do you want to come out on your own, or do you want me to drag you out?" Yi Qinghan said coldly. Lin Yi was shocked. He slowly walked out with a soldier in his hand and a sword against his neck. He looked at the 3 people and asked gloomily, "How did you find me?" "Despicable thing, you dare to attack a baby. I will not forgive you." The person with different pupils dispersed the soul-chasing technique. Lin Yi was like a withered wooden stake, without any aura. The soldier was suppressed and couldn't move, but he wasn't afraid in the face of danger. He raised his head and waited for death. Yi Qinghan looked at Lin Yi and laughed in anger as he said, "Let him go, and I'll give you 3 breaths of time to escape. If you can't escape, don't blame me for what happens next." Lin Yi was silent as he looked at Xianyan Xue and Yi Qinghan. Xianyan Xue alone was enough to capture him, and there was also Yi Qinghan and that woman of unknown origin. Even at such a close distance, he couldn't see her face. "If you don't want him to die, then retreat. Let me leave the crazy manor's territory." Lin Yi roared, trying to suppress the fear in his heart. "Do you think he's afraid of death?" Yi Qinghan coldly asked. "Release the restriction on him. If he says he's afraid of death, I'll let you leave the territory." Lin Yi held on to a glimmer of hope and actually opened the restriction. Although that person was just a small soldier, he had an irreplaceable fanaticism and faith towards the Kuang Manor. He roared, "Manor Lord, please avenge me." "You mustn't." Lin Yi grabbed the soldier's throat, his eyes filled with killing intent. However, a cold smile appeared on his face as he looked at Yi Qinghan and said, "I didn't expect a soldier of the crazy manor to be so loyal. Are you willing to let him die for you? A life for a life. If you let me go, I'll let him go. Don't expect me to let him go first. Xianyan Xue alone can catch up to me. I'm not so arrogant as to gamble with the 3 of you." Lin Yi slowly leaned back, his back facing the mountain, guarding against any sneak attacks from Yi Qinghan and the others. "Do you think I can't deal with you like this?" The person with abnormal pupils suddenly removed the concealment on her face, revealing a seductive face. Her eyes emitted 2 kinds of light that were so clear and seductive in the night. Xianyan Xue was stunned, and Lin Yi was given a fright. Those eyes were even more terrifying than black holes. With just a glance, one would fall into them. Even one's soul would be sucked in. Soul, "Soul, enter my dream." The person with abnormal pupils no longer concealed her voice. It was like the sound of nature whispering into one's ears. Yi Qinghan's body trembled, and he quickly closed his eyes. His heart raced. He felt as if his soul was about to be taken away in that instant. Xian Yanxue only saw those eyes from the side, and she felt the same as Yi Qinghan. She couldn't help but gulp and quickly averted her gaze. Lin Yi looked directly at the person with abnormal pupils, and he was instantly stunned. There was no emotion in his eyes, no fear, no joy, as if he was a dead man. The sword in his hand fell to the ground, and the soldier who was bound fell to the ground and fainted. It was too terrifying. Those eyes were completely irresistible. What kind of race is this? Yi Qinghan didn't understand. He had never seen or heard of such a race before, but the divine bird pretended not to see them. Xian Yanxue had also never seen someone with abnormal pupils, and there were no records of such a person in her family. At this moment, seeing it for the first time, she actually felt her hair stand on end. The divine power in her body was actually incompatible with her, and she was very wary of her. The person with abnormal pupils retracted the light in her eyes, and in an instant, she returned to her original appearance. Covered by the concealment, her blurry face once again sank into the darkness. Yi Qinghan grabbed the unconscious Lin Yi, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. Chapter 641. The next day, the insane manor announced that they had caught the culprit. The culprit had committed a heinous crime and would be whipped to death as a warning to others. The citizens of the insane manor had been greatly frightened over the past few days, and they were all furious at Lin Ye's actions. Lin Yi woke up from his sleep and saw that his limbs were bound by the god-locking chains. Even the bones in his hands had been pierced. He was instantly terrified. Looking at the countless angry citizens around him, his pupils constricted. He stared at Yi Qinghan and said coldly, "Yi Qinghan, you actually let that demoness use her demonic arts to confuse me. Release me and fight me one-on-one if you have the guts." "You won't have the chance." Yi Qinghan's cold eyes emitted a dense killing intent. With a wave of his hand, the god-beating whip appeared in his hand. He threw it in front of him and said to the citizens of the insane manor, "His name is Lin Yi, ranked 17th on the wind cloud list. Beat him up for me. If he dies, I will take responsibility. If you beat him to death, I will reward you with 100 mid-grade divine crystals." A group of people surrounded Lin Yi and fought for the god-beating whip. When they couldn't get the whip, they used their own weapons to hack at Lin Yi. Some set fire to him, others used poison. All sorts of weapons smashed Lin Yi's body. A dignified intermediate god priest didn't care about being beaten up by ordinary weapons. He couldn't help but sneer and glare at the crowd. "You dare to attack the seat? I will show you in a month." Crack! A hurried crack of the whip pierced through the void. It passed through the crowd and struck Lin Ye's chest. Ugh! A mournful roar shook the void. Many people covered their ears and fled frantically. Lin Ye's flesh was lacerated, and his defensive divine artifact was cracked. The soul within his godhead felt like it was being roasted by fire. It was as if the whip had struck his soul directly. A small crack appeared on his godhead. This was because the cultivation of the whip-wielding youth was too low. Otherwise, Lin Ye's godhead would have exploded on the spot and his soul would have been destroyed. Yi Qinghan wanted to torture Lin Yi. He wanted to vent his anger for Lin Yi and for himself. He wanted the world to understand how miserable the consequences of interfering in the insane manor's territory were. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan pointed his finger and sealed Lin Ye's throat. Lin Yi could only struggle but could not hurt anyone. He could only allow ordinary people to beat him with the holy whip. It would hurt, but he would not die. Give him a good beating. Beat him until the master behind him speaks up, Yi Qinghan said sternly. The blade of Lulan was in charge of maintaining order at the scene. Each person could only be whipped 3 times at most. After that, they would have to replace him. An hour later, Lin Yi was tortured to the point where he did not even look human anymore. Even the little golden crow and the divine bird came out to join in the fun. They kept spitting out scorching flames, almost burning Lin Yi alive. After 3 whole days of torture, No one from God's organization stood up to say anything. Yi Qinghan sneered and issued a declaration, warning some people not to be dogs. Otherwise, even if they died, their masters would not stand up to say a word. God's organization wanted Kuang Fu to fall apart, so Yi Qinghan wanted to give them a taste of their own medicine. The world knew who Lin Yi was serving. Now that he was captured and tortured to death, if God's organization did not speak up, who would serve them in the future? I guess they will send experts to rescue Lin Yi tonight. They will tell the world that God's organization will not give up on anyone. Only then can they preserve their reputation, Xian Yanxue said indifferently. Yi Qinghan groaned and said hoarsely, I'm afraid they won't come. I will kill as many people as they come tonight. Surround the enemy and attack the reinforcements. That day, Yi Qinghan had already started to make arrangements. The true top experts of Kuang Fu all came out of seclusion. Even Grand Sovereign Shura appeared in the auction house. Everything was done quietly. Currently, the strongest person in Kuang Fu was Grand Sovereign Shura. The most difficult one to guard against was the man with different pupils. His cultivation was definitely on par with the Kuang Fu's. After him were Xian Yanxue and Yang Ru. After them were Yi Qinghan, Silo, Qin Lang, and the Crown Prince of the Holy Dragon Divine Kingdom. Emperor Yi and Gu Qingyu of Kuang Fu's inner sect came out of seclusion. Xia Qiue had cultivated the second form of the Great Nirvana sword art, which was on par with Gu Qingyu. Their sword Dao had reached the pinnacle, and their killing speed was much purer than Yi Qinghan's sword Dao. After all, he did not specialize in sword Dao. Yao Can gave Nie Tian a top-grade 12 divine medicine and a giant axe art. It was rumored that this secret art was at the Kuang Fu's level. Yao Can had obtained it for thousands of years, but no one had been able to use it. Now, he gave it to Nie Tian. As soon as the giant axe art was used, it was as if it could split heaven and earth. It was unstoppable and unstoppable. Nie Tian became the third person in Kuang Fu who was on par with the Kuang Fu's mansion master. Yao Can was very satisfied. The grade 12 divine medicine had not gone to waste. Countless experts of Kuang Fu gathered in all directions. They could see Lin Yi hanging from an ancient ivy tree. His clothes were in tatters, and his mind was on the verge of collapse. He was a top existence on the Wind God list, but he had already lost his elegance and was tortured beyond recognition. Kuang Fu was in imminent danger. God's organization had failed to rescue Nie Tian tonight, so they would definitely fight. Any agreement was nonsense. If they did not fight, then they would fight. Strength was the main theme of the mythological plane. Sure enough, Berserk God Blade King sent news that God's organization had already made their move. At least 10 Kuang Fu's mansion master-level youths were about to arrive. God's organization had already asked about Nie Tian's whereabouts, but Berserk God Blade King refused. Berserk God Blade King was not stupid. He knew that interfering in the affairs of God's organization would not end well. He would wait until the day of the competition to make his move. In the Endless Plains, Di Longtian used the Heavenly Dao Human Sovereign Sword to reorganize the ancient massacre gods. He had attracted the elites of his generation to fight Chun Qiu. Yi Feng wanted Di Longtian to lead the way, so he also joined the ancient massacre gods. The three of them worked together to reorganize the ancient massacre gods. The ancient massacre gods quickly returned to their former appearance. They were filled with battle intent. It was an honor to be a hunter. However, the hunters were no longer hunting beasts. They were going to enter the Endless Plains to hunt their enemies. Di Longtian led a large group of ancient massacre gods through the passageway and occupied God's County and Black Moon County. With that as the base, he even moved the ancient massacre god palace from the Endless Plains over. There were 300,000 hunters and 30,000 ancient massacre gods. Although their cultivation was not high, their battle intent was high. There were only a few dozen priests, and the strongest ones were Yi Feng and Zhan Qiu, who were both lower extreme Dao supreme beings. However, with Kuang Fu at the front, Mu Fu did not dare to attack. The ancient massacre gods had a relatively easy environment to grow in. Di Longtian also brought the dozens of little fellows over. They were all mixed in with the army camp. Even now, Yi Qinghan did not know. Otherwise, he would have gone crazy. Void God Yi and the others looked at the mythical realm curiously and were quite shocked. They thought to themselves that this was the so-called mythical realm. It was indeed much more interesting than the boundless realms. Even a powerful flying beast could kill a great emperor, and they felt quite pressured. Chapter 642. It was a dark and windy night. The night was as dark as ink, and even the stars were hidden. Not a single person could be seen in the lawless area. It was as if one could feel the killing intent slowly approaching. No one was moving around Quang Manor. The people were all hiding in their homes. The smell of blood could even be smelled on the streets. A few man-eating birds were sitting on the treetops, waiting for food. More than a dozen figures climbed up the mountain to the southwest of Southern Mountain Pass and entered Quang Manor's territory. There were 12 people in total, and none of them were below the mid-level. They knew that Quang Manor would set up a trap for them, but they had no choice but to come. However, they were confident that Quang Manor didn't have so many manor lords. The 12 of them were enough to wipe out Quang Manor. Yao Zilong personally led the team. He was here to deal with Grand Monarch Shura. Ao Jian was a young expert of God's organization. He wasn't on the Wind Cloud list, but he was on the legendary elite list. He was ranked 17th, and his battle strength was comparable to the top 10 on the list. Su Fan was the eldest disciple of God's organization's Broken World Mountain. His cultivation was comparable to the elders of the Broken World Mountain. He was also on the elite list, and he was ranked 18th, just like Ao Jian. Xue Chong was the eldest disciple of the Snow Clan, and he was in the top 10 on the Wind Cloud list. Han Shi was a great teacher of Tian Ke Divine College. Ji Xingjie was ranked 3rd among the 5th grade of Tian Ke Divine College. Although he wasn't on the elite list or the Wind Cloud list, his battle strength was heaven-defying. He had fought many teachers without losing. Among the remaining people, there were 3 veteran mansion masters and 3 unknown young experts. Although they were unknown, to be able to be selected to participate in this mission, their combat strength was definitely not weak. The 12 people were very quiet. They wore armor and held swords as they silently pounced toward the center of Quang Manor. A murderous sound of a guqin drifted outside the mansion. The cold air was oppressive. At the moment, there were no guards outside the mansion. The auction house and the mansion were brightly lit, but no one was moving. It seemed that they were defenseless. Di Longtian quietly came from behind, but Yi Feng and Zhan Chuanqiu were left inside Quang Manor. After all, there needed to be experts there. As soon as they entered the auction house, they found that only Yi Qinghan and Emperor Yi were there. No one else. Big brother, where are they? Di Longtian. Emperor Yi still did not stop playing the guqin. The sound of the guqin drifted into the distance, and any object it touched would be reflected back. Yi Qinghan stood up, pointed at the map, and pointed to the front left where Lin Yi was, and said lightly, "They are all in all directions. You guard here. Tonight, we will launch a move called 10 Directions Return to 1. As long as the enemy enters the battle zone, you, Wu Tian, Gu Qingyu, Xia Qiyue, and all the other sword masters will be responsible for the main attack. My son and I will be responsible for suppressing them, making them unable to attack. The others will be responsible for imprisoning this area, trying not to harm the innocent and destroy the mansion." Good. It's a good opportunity to test the power of the human sovereign sword. Di Longtian pursed his lips, his eyes cold. Di Shang had transformed himself into a sword, wanting to bring glory to the ancient desolate region. As his son, how could he not fulfill his father's dying wish? Remember, I've asked for a lot of help this time. Don't get it wrong, everyone on our side has a flame mark on their left shoulder. Yi Qinghan instructed, you should change your clothes as well. The enemy's men could appear at any moment. Tonight's battle might be very fierce. Di Longtian nodded fiercely. He couldn't wait to kill the God organization members. Those who offend my insane sect will be killed no matter how strong they are. You should be familiar with the aura of the 10 Directions seal. Once it moves, now go to where you are. Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. Di Longtian retreated and arrived about 500 meters southwest of Lin Yi. There was a house here, and it looked like a normal house. He directly hid in it, and from a high position, he could see Lin Ye's location clearly. Di Longtian looked around curiously, but he didn't see anyone. He couldn't see where the other members of the insane sect were hiding. Time slowly passed. Yi Qinghan stood at the window and looked at the night sky. The full moon tore through the darkness and illuminated the earth. The silver-white moonlight sprinkled on his face, and his old and strong face was filled with incomparable anger and killing intent. The sound of the zither came to an abrupt stop. Emperor Yi stood up with his zither and said in a low voice, "Southeast. They're here. There are 12 people in total and they're all prefecture lords." With a flick of Yi Qinghan's finger, a wisp of fire origin lit up the torches above Quang Manor. There were torches every 10 meters above the manor, but none of them had been lit yet. This time, he had lit up 12 torches, all of which were located in the southeast direction. Di Longtian could clearly see the 12 torches burning. He immediately understood that the enemy was here. There were 12 of them. Act according to plan. Leave no one alive. Yi Qinghan said coldly. 12 prefecture lords were enough to attack any of the major mansions. If it was just to save a person, it would be easy, but this was the insane sect. Grand Monarch Shura opened his eyes slightly. He was actually below Linyi. The entire ground had been hollowed out by Little Jia. At this moment, he was holding the Shura saber, waiting for the enemy to arrive. First, he would kill 1 or 2 prefecture lords. Then, the preparations for tonight's mission would be more or less complete. Little Jia was dressed in golden battle armor, and his young and tender face was filled with excitement. This was his first mission, and he actually had to drag a prefecture lord down into the ground. Once a prefecture lord was underground, he wouldn't be able to move at all, as he would be restricted by Little Jia. It was hard to say who would win or lose, but at least Little Jia had the ability to protect himself. "They're here. Get ready," Grand Monarch Shura reminded indifferently. Little Jia nodded and transformed back into its original form. Its body shook, and its sharp claws reached out to the ground. Inside the insane sect, the person with different pupils was standing with her sword in her arms. She was just watching calmly. Tonight, she didn't plan to make a move. She didn't want to expose her identity. This kind of chaotic battle wasn't suitable for her. Once her identity was exposed, she might be able to kill all the invaders, but the insane sect's people would definitely notice that she wasn't ordinary. The person with different pupils didn't make a move, but that didn't mean that the other terrifying existence in the insane sect wouldn't make a move. Medusa had successfully evolved, and her divine power continued to rise. In the blink of an eye, she had reached the peak and become a prefecture lord. At this moment, she walked out of the inner sect with her eyes closed. However, not a single blade of grass or tree in the outside world could escape her divine sense. Yao Zilong and the others were very vigilant. They made hand signals, asking for a quick battle. The 12 of them split into 8 different directions, vigilant. Yao Zilong personally led 3 people and rushed toward Lin Ye's location. Han Yuan, Ji Jingjie, and a strange young man. Yao Zilong unsheathed his sword and looked at the disheveled Lin Yi. Lin Ye's bones were sticking out, and his body reeked of blood and charred. He couldn't help but frown. Lin Yi had been tortured too miserably. Even if he discovered that people from God's organization had come to rescue him, he couldn't respond because his back was full of ivy roots. The star-twisting vine disguised itself as an ordinary vine, but its main body was hidden deep underground. As long as its main body wasn't attacked, it wouldn't die. It had no problem entangling a prefecture lord. Ring. What? Yao Zilong moved. 2 sword beams cut through 2 of the vines, and he reached out to grab Lin Yi. However, he failed because the vines were pulling him back. In the blink of an eye, the Azura saber slashed out from the ground and pierced through Ji Jingjie's body. The elite of a generation had been cleaved in half. Xiu! Xiu! Countless vines broke out from the ground and wrapped around the ankles of Yao Zilong, Han Yuan, and the others. What? 10 directions returned to 1. The sky suddenly darkened as a terrifying aura descended from the sky. It was as if the sky had collapsed. Yi Qinghan descended from the sky with the 10 directions seal in his hand. Emperor Yi stood on his shoulder, and the sound of a zither filled the air. The battle had begun silently. Chapter 643. 10 Directions Return to 1. A deep roar resounded through the mountains and rivers as Yi Qinghan and Emperor Yi descended from the sky. The 10 Directions seal was activated by the primal chaos divinity source and erupted with the power of a high god artifact. Grand Monarch Azura attacked from below and killed Ji Xingjie. Then he slashed at another young man. Little Jia reached out and grabbed Han Shua's ankle, instantly dragging him down into the ground. They went thousands of meters deep. Almost at the same time, Yao Zilong didn't have time to help the young man. His ankle and arm were entangled by thousands of vines. Yao Zilong had just shattered the vines when they entangled him again. In the blink of an eye, the vines had wrapped around Yao Zilong's entire body and tightened. Yao Zilong was suppressed by a high god artifact from above, and Grand Monarch Azura was attacking from below. In the middle, the star-twisting vine was trying to restrain Yao Zilong at all costs. Ji Xingjie was killed on the spot, and his godhead was taken away. Han Yuan was dragged deep underground by Little Jia, and no one knew where he ended up. As for the young man, his cultivation base wasn't weak. Facing Grand Monarch Azura's attacks, he withstood more than a dozen strikes in the blink of an eye. However, when Yi Qinghan's 10 Direction seal came pressing down on him, he was instantly defeated. The 10 Direction seal forced him to his knees and mercilessly killed by Grand Monarch Azura. Boom! The ground outside the crazed manor collapsed instantly. The area within 100 meters sank by more than a few hundred meters. The 10 Directions seal suppressed everyone with an irresistible force. Su Fan held a great sword and slashed at the 10 Directions seal with divine power. He, who claimed to be able to break a world with a single slash, only knew how wrong he was when he slashed at the seal. Bang! Su Fan felt as if he had slashed at a high god artifact. His mid-god artifact shattered on the spot. His arm was shattered, and his flesh and blood splattered everywhere. He coughed up blood and flew backward. Su Fan's attack alerted the others. Xue Chong and the others frantically circulated their divine power. They didn't want to attack the 10 Direction seal, but they wanted to defend against Yi Qinghan's attack. Suppress him! Yi Qinghan's veins bulged, and his dragon blood boiled. Golden light erupted from his body, giving him the power to uproot a mountain. Emperor Yi mobilized the power of heaven and earth, turning the outside of Kuang Manor into a deep abyss. The density of the ground reached a terrifying level. Han Yuan, who was dragged underground, screamed tragically. He did not care about the pressure underground, but being squeezed by the 10 Directions seal made him feel like his body was about to explode. Little Jia's original body was a pangolin that could pass through mountains and valleys. However, at this moment, he felt that his back was about to break, and blood was about to spurt out. The density of the pressure above was increasing, and it was enough to crush any god below the level of a high god. He simply abandoned Han Yuan and rushed into the distance, away from the underground of the crazed manor. Without Xiao Jia dragging him, Han Shua was buried alive thousands of meters underground. His flesh and blood were crushed into powder, and his bones were broken. He was bleeding from his eyes, nose, mouth, and mouth. He could not move at all. Up above, at the instant Yi Qinghan appeared, dozens of figures rushed out from all directions. Nie Tian, Gu Qingyu, Sairo, Qin Lang, all the experts of the inner sect of Kuang Manor appeared. Their swords split the sky, and their swords rumbled. The stronger ones were in charge of attacking, while the weaker ones worked together to imprison the area, preventing the powerful attacks from harming the innocent people of Kuang Manor. Within 1,000 meters of Kuang Manor, divine light soared into the sky. It could be seen clearly from thousands of miles away. Even Mu Manor Master, who was far away in the Mu Manor, could clearly feel a wave of energy that could kill a Manor Master. He could not help but fly into the sky and look at the territory of Kuang Manor. This night was destined to be a sleepless one, at least for this lawless area. Kill! The inner sect of Kuang Manor roared, and their aura overwhelmed everything. Great Nirvana Sword Technique. In an instant, at least 10 people used the Great Nirvana Sword Technique. One sword turned into 3, And the sword light was enough to cause damage to an extreme Tao god. It could even threaten a manor master. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. If you all die, no one will know that I attacked. Do you think any of you will be able to leave the insane mansion alive today? Evil Thought's snow sword was unsheathed like a rainbow piercing through the moon. The sword's momentum was unrestrained and domineering, like flowing water. Whoosh, whoosh. The solemn melody between heaven and earth blasted into everyone's consciousness. The flame mark on the left shoulder of the cultivator from the insane house actually glowed, and it began to identify him. Renhuang Yi had increased their combat power, and the cultivators from the gods' organization felt as if their blood was about to freeze. Their path heart roared, and their combat power was greatly reduced. Yao Zilong truly lived up to his reputation as an officer of God's organization. His god power poured out, and with a roar, he shattered the shackles of the star-twisting vine. Then he waved his hand, sending out god power toward the 10-direction seal. Yao Zilong was half a step away from becoming a higher god. His divine energy was boundless, and Yi Qinghan's 6 divine personas and the 10-direction seal were not something he could contend against. When the two sides' attacks collided, it was as if the sky was being torn apart. Yi Qinghan was in an even more miserable state. The 10-direction seal was a superior divine artifact, perhaps even a legendary sovereign divine artifact. It wasn't easy to control, and after being struck by Yao Zilong's terrifying power, Yi Qinghan was sent flying. Even though his arms were reinforced by dragon blood and divine power, they were still broken, revealing only white bones. When Xuechong of the snow race saw Yi Qinghan suffering from the divine weapon's backlash, he immediately channeled the Tao of snow. Snowflakes danced in the air, and wherever the snowflakes passed, they would turn into ice crystals. Anything that came into contact with the snowflakes would be frozen in an instant. Even the strongest gods would be frozen, and their godheads would be sealed in ice. Xuechong's understanding of the great Tao of snow had almost surpassed Jian Qinshue's scarlet snow body. With a flick of his finger, the snow between heaven and earth instantly turned into snow dragons. Even time and space were frozen. A gentle touch would shatter it and form a huge black hole. The 10-direction seal had lost control and was suspended in midair. Yi Qinghan finally reacted with great difficulty. Yao Zilong's combat prowess was truly frightening. Yi Qinghan had exhausted all of his divine power and had even mobilized the primal chaos divine source. Yet, Yao Zilong's attacks had still left him with light injuries. Yao Zilong pounced on Renhuang Yi the moment he landed on the ground, intending to kill him. 12 members of God's organization had come. 2 of them had been killed by Grand Monarch Azura on the spot. Han Yuan had been dragged thousands of meters underground by Little Jia and was almost buried alive. Whether or not he could climb back up was another matter. Ao Jian was now entangled with Xian Yanxue and Yao Zilong with Grand Monarch Azura. There were still 7 experts left. Gu Qingyu, Di Long Tian, Sikong Qingjun, and Muyu Tianchen were holding back one of them. Qin Lang, Silo, Yang Ru, and the Holy Dragon Crown Prince were working together to hold back a veteran prefecture master. None of them were much weaker than the prefecture master. With the 4 of them working together, they instantly gained the upper hand. There were still 5 people left. Nye Tian, Stan Huang Tian, Chitian Monkey King, Xia Chiyue, and Xia Ziluo were entangled with Xuechong. These 5 people were practically suppressing Xuechong. Xia Ziluo was the strongest. With the Hell's Map to protect herself, she directly swallowed the snow dragon and forcefully grabbed Xuechong's neck. "No, you're Medusa." The young man was terrified. He tried to use his divine power to destroy the element of petrification, but he was still an elite of the younger generation. He was actually able to temporarily block the element of petrification. He raised his sword and pointed it at Medusa. That whoosh, 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 whoosh. Kill Medusa with Lu Meng first. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Yi Qinghan's veins bulged. He held the 7-foot crazy hammer in his hand, and his entire body was covered in rank 12 flames. He charged straight at the veteran manor-head. Renhuang Yi gave up on helping Yi Qinghan and charged at Medusa instead. Before he arrived, the sound of his guqin transformed into a blade that blasted towards Lung Tai. Chapter 644. In the sky above the insane mansion, divine light illuminated the 9 heavens. It was as if dozens of mansion masters were fighting in a chaotic battle. The slightest carelessness could lead to death. There were only a few mansion masters in the entire plane. Including the top experts of the younger generation, there were no more than 10,000 of them. This was a middle plane with countless living beings. There were billions of intermediate god worshippers and countless lower god worshippers. In one night, the insane mansion had gathered so many mansion masters for a chaotic battle. Dozens of experts from the insane sect's inner sect surrounded the battlefield. Under the leadership of Lu Zhantian, the Iron Dragon army quietly appeared and surrounded the battlefield. They poured their divine power and set up a large formation. Together with the inner sect experts, they trapped the battlefield within 1,000 meters of the insane mansion. Because of the surprise attack, Grand Monarch Shura killed 2 mansion masters and held one back. Han Yuan was dragged underground by Little Jia. At this moment, the insane sect actually had the upper hand. Otherwise, today would have been a tragic day with countless casualties. Yi Qinghan exuded a terrifying dragon's aura. The 7 feet heavy frenzy emitted divine light. Yi Qinghan's divine power was endlessly enhanced by the primal chaos mantra. With 6 godhoods activated at the same time, Yi Qinghan's battle intent had reached an unprecedented level. Azure Dragon goes to sea. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, Yi Qinghan's foot crushed the ground as he swung it violently towards the veteran manor-head. His momentum was unstoppable. A gigantic azure dragon appeared behind him and accompanied Yi Qinghan's charge towards his opponent. The azure dragon's roar shook the heavens. The blade light cut through time and space and appeared in front of his opponent. His opponent was a mansion master of the older generation. His cultivation was quite exaggerated. He seemed to have raised his hand lightly, but in reality, he had mobilized the laws of heaven and earth. The 5 elements were in chaos. His divine power gathered into a huge hand that covered the sky and smashed down toward Yi Qinghan. Boom! The huge 5-fingered hand shattered the void and collided with Yi Qinghan's 7 feet heavy frenzy. Instantly, a tearing sound pierced everyone's eardrums and rushed to the 9 heavens. Even the defensive formation could not withstand it. Bam bam bam! Yi Qinghan's instantaneous burst of power was 10 times stronger than usual, but he was still unable to withstand the attacks of a veteran manor-head. He was instantly sent flying back several hundred meters, leaving a deep imprint on the ground with every step he took. He almost crashed into the defensive array set up by the inner sect. Ugh! Yi Qinghan roared in anger, and the dragon blood in his body burned, turning into divine energy that poured out in torrents. The divine energy in his godhead was completely exhausted in an instant, and the primal chaos divine origins divine energy began to pour out, spontaneously reinforcing him and blocking his opponent's attack. The light of a grain of rice dares to compete with the brilliance of the moon. The corners of the old mansion master's mouth curled up, revealing a trace of disdain. The old mansion master was indeed the old mansion master. No matter how strong the younger generation was, they could only be compared to ordinary mansion masters. A super-existence like him would have no problem suppressing Xian Yan Shui. Boom! The old man unleashed another burst of divine power. His divine power increased by more than 80%, and the giant palm print became even more solid. It ruthlessly pressed down on Yi Qinghan. Crack! The crisp sound of broken bones pierced everyone's eardrums. Yi Qinghan's physical body was twisting and changing shape. His azure dragon bloodline and 5 elemental Dao body erupted at the same time. Even the light of the moon can be covered by dark clouds. Yi Qinghan roared and gradually stabilized his body. His eyes were fixed on the old man in the sky, and he could feel his opponent's killing intent. His mind was spinning rapidly, and he knew that it was impossible to block the old mansion master's attack with brute force. His left hand gradually moved away from Berserk, and he summoned the 10 Directions seal. He began to absorb the divine energy from the primal chaos divine origin to activate the 10 Directions seal. However, the 10 Directions seal consumed too much divine energy, and the divine energy he could draw from it was all sucked away by Berserk. There was no way he could activate the 10 Directions seal. Time. I need a breath's time. Yi Qinghan roared. If he couldn't activate the 10 Directions seal, it was only a matter of time before he lost. At this moment, Lu Zhantian suddenly rushed in from the outside, and his spear pierced through the void, stabbing towards the old mansion master's back. Boom! 3 halos shot out from the old mansion master's back, blocking Lu Zhantian's attack and sending Lu Zhantian flying. Lu Zhantian was unwilling to give up, and he rose from the ground again, gathering all of his divine energy for this attack. Boom! 2 rainbow-colored halos formed behind the old mansion master's back, and they broke the long spear in Lu Zhantian's hand. Lu Zhantian coughed out blood and was sent flying into the distance. 2 godheads. The old man in front of him also had 2 godheads. No wonder he had so much divine energy. Yi Qinghan's pupils shrunk, and he directly dug out the primal chaos divine origin. He gave up on Berserk's defense, and drew out a vast amount of primal chaos energy to activate the 10 Directions seal. Without Berserk's defense, the old man's killing intent surged, and he waved his hand, causing the void to collapse. In the blink of an eye, his palm was above Yi Qinghan's head. Yi Qinghan's facial muscles were deformed by the impact of the qi. The aura of death enveloped him. At this moment, he had to seize every moment. If he couldn't instantly erupt with the power of the 10 Directions seal, Yi Qinghan would undoubtedly die. Yi Qinghan was gambling that he could activate the 10 Directions seal in an instant. Boom! The 10 Directions seal was really activated. Yi Qinghan drew out all the remaining divine energy from his 6 godheads and poured it into the 10 Directions seal. He pushed his palms forward. 10 Directions shatter, defying the 9 heavens. Boom! The 10 Directions seal shot into the sky and slammed into the palm. The aura of a superior god poured into the old mansion master's body through his divine energy. Pooh! No! This is a superior god artifact. The old mansion master screamed, and his arms exploded. His broken body flew into the sky, but it was stopped by the defensive barrier of the Steel Dragon army. Boom! The old mansion master was dizzy from the impact of the 10 Directions seal, and he slammed into the defensive barrier. The barrier couldn't withstand the impact of the 10 Directions seal and the old mansion master's body, and it shattered. The terrifying impact spread out in all directions. Use your strength. Block it for me. Lu Zhantian roared and personally rushed out to stop the shockwaves. The shockwaves were too terrifying. If they couldn't stop them, then not to mention the innocent creatures in the periphery, even the remaining 30,000 Iron Dragon army soldiers would be annihilated. No one in the Steel Dragon army was afraid of death. At this moment, they poured out all their divine energy to block the shockwaves. The barrier suddenly lit up, and a huge ball of light appeared above the crazed manor. Kill! More than 1,000 disciples from the outer sect of the insane sect rushed out and desperately poured their divine power into the barrier. However, the barrier was on the verge of collapsing. Kill! Thousands of figures rushed out of the crazed manor's territory, followed by nearly 10,000 people. They were all in the divine sacrifice realm. They were ordinary residents, but there were also people from various sections. They all rushed to the battlefield and poured their divine energy into the barrier to help the crazed manor. This was the cohesiveness of the crazed manor. As more and more people rushed in, the barrier became more and more stable. Yi Qinghan could use the 10 Directions seal without restraint, and the old mansion master was forced to retreat. All 10 directions of the universe, heed my command. Suppress. Yi Qinghan was like the god of death from the 9 heavens. He didn't even bother to defend himself as he manipulated the 10 Directions seal to spin at high speed. With the 10 Directions seal under his control, he viciously slammed it towards the old manor head. Although the old mansion master was powerful, he couldn't be compared to a superior god artifact. Boom! The 10 Directions seal landed on the old mansion master's head, and his head was instantly crushed. His godhead was also suppressed under the 10 Directions seal. No matter how hard the two godheads struggled, they couldn't break free from the 10 Directions seal's restraint. Chapter 645. Screech. A blood-curdling scream resounded through the mountains and rivers. Everyone's emotions were stirred. The insane faction had given them a sense of belonging. They did not want the insane faction to be destroyed and become someone else's slave. The insane faction had led countless sects to become rich and treated everyone equally. No other faction could give them such treatment. Protect the insane faction. This was the belief of everyone in the insane faction. Even if they could not participate in the battle, they had to at least stabilize the defensive barrier. The more people there were, the greater the chance of the insane faction's victory. In addition to the 30,000 Iron Dragon Army soldiers, there were more than 3,000 inner sect members and hundreds of thousands of experts. They were all experts who had joined the insane faction. They came from all directions and more people gathered. In the end, there were nearly 1 million people surrounding the insane faction. Each person's divine power was enough to control the entire area, not to mention that they were pouring out their divine power without caring about the cost. The defensive barrier was as stable as Mount Tai. Kill! Hum. Emperor Yi stood in the form of a guqin. The guqin music turned into the most terrifying of blades, which were impossible to defend against. It directly exploded in the enemy's mind. Lung Tai and Lu Mang were beaten back by Emperor Yi and Medusa. Part of Lu Mang's body was petrified, and his combat power was weakened. In the end, Shirgu smashed his head with a brick from behind. His divine body exploded on the spot, and his quintessence was forcibly suppressed by Medusa. Only Lung Tai, Medusa, Emperor Yi, and Shirgu were left. In just an instant, they had lost another expert. There was strength in numbers. Coupled with the unity of the group, the insane faction had almost no casualties. Even if there were serious injuries, it was not life-threatening. Meanwhile, half of the 12 people from God's organization had been killed. Yao Zilong roared in anger. His body was covered in wounds, and he was in despair. The 12 people he had brought should have been able to crush Quang Manor into pieces, but they had failed. There was even a possibility that they would all be wiped out. Yi Qinghan, just wait for the full-scale war with God's organization, bang. Yao Zilong roared. Even now, he still wanted to threaten Yi Qinghan, but Grand Monarch Azura kicked him in the chest and almost broke his divine weapon with a slash of his saber. He fell backward and crashed into the distance. Whoosh! A beam of sword light split the sky. The will of the sword was enough to command the way of the sword. The one sword instantly transformed into 3 swords, which sliced through Yao Zilong's head, back, and waist. The sword chi carried an irreversible will, suppressing Yao Zilong's physical body. Di Longtian's invincible heavenly Dao human emperor sword tore through Yao Zilong's defenses. Just as Di Longtian's godhead was about to flee, Yao Zilong kicked it toward Grand Monarch Shura. Yao Zilong was defeated. Grand Monarch Shura shrugged. He had gone to great lengths to defeat Yao Zilong, but before he could kill him, he had been killed by Di Longtian. However, he wasn't interested in competing with Di Longtian for glory, so he forcibly took Yao Zilong's godhead and destroyed his soul on the spot. Now that Xue Chong had been surrounded by Yang Ru and the Grand Prince of the Dragonfolk, as well as numerous experts from the inner sect of the Proud Heaven sect, there was no way Xue Chong would have been able to escape defeat. Even if he had been a bit stronger, he would still have been defeated. I surrender. As long as you don't kill me, you can name any conditions you want. Xue Chong was hit in the chest by Nye Tian's axe and almost died on the spot. He crashed to the ground and coughed up blood. Knowing that there was no chance, he surrendered. Everyone swarmed over and imprisoned Xue Chong. At this moment, only Ao Jian was still struggling. Seeing dozens of experts from the Proud Heaven sect surround him, his fingertips trembled. He didn't know what to do. He's a member of God's organization, not an outsider. We can't let him live. Xian Yanxue was covered in blood, some of which was hers, and some of which was Ao Jian's. It was obvious that Ao Jian was really strong. Hearing this, Ao Jian knew that there was no hope for him to surrender. He couldn't help but threaten angrily, "What you've done today has angered God's organization and the Tian K Theological Academy. If I die, you won't live either. As long as I kill you all and destroy your corpses, God's organization and the Tian K Theological Academy will have to suffer in silence." Yi Qinghan let out a muffled groan as he swung the 10-direction seal and smashed it into Ao Jian's chest. Bang! Ao Jian coughed out blood. His godhead was almost shattered. He didn't resist at all. At this time, he would die either way. It was just a matter of time. If he didn't resist, he might have a chance. Ao Jian simply stabbed his sword into the ground and glared at everyone. It was as if he was saying that he had abandoned his sword. If they were heroes, they couldn't fight anymore. Yi Qinghan smiled disdainfully and said indifferently, "I only care about winning or losing in life and death. I never thought of myself as a hero. Maybe it will be useful to take him down." More than a dozen people from the inner sect rushed out and forcibly suppressed Ao Jian. They sealed his godhead and tied him up. After this night, God's organization didn't rescue Lin Yi. Instead, they lost 12 powerful experts. 9 died tragically and 2 were captured alive. As for Han Mang, it was unknown whether he was alive or not. Little Jia crawled out from the ground. His divine body was almost crushed by the 10-direction seal. At this moment, he was sweating profusely as he looked at the mess outside the Proud Heaven sect. "Where did you drag Han Mang to?" Sikong Qingjun asked curiously. "Underground. It should be about 1,000 meters deep." Little Jia smiled embarrassedly. This time, he had made a contribution. If Han Mang had participated in the battle, the Proud Heaven sect might not have won. A master of the Proud Heaven sect could change the outcome of a battle, let alone a great teacher of the school of divinity. Yi Qinghan clenched his iron fist. He had long wanted to kill Han Mang. In a low voice, he said, "Drag him up again." At this moment, Han Mang was lying sullenly on the ground, struggling with all his might. However, the 10-direction seal was too dense here. Even if he could break through, he couldn't break through 1,000 meters of ground. His whole body was sore. He had strength but couldn't use it. He could only lie in the dark underground and wait for others to dig him out. He didn't know how long he had been lying there, but little Jia appeared and dragged him up again. He had just poked his head out and wanted to hurt Han Mang when he saw a group of experts surrounding him. Boom! Yi Qinghan's fist landed on Han Mang's face. His strength was so vast that he could kill a medium god with his body alone. Before Han Mang could say anything, his head was smashed into the ground by the fist. Buzz buzz buzz, Han Mang only felt that he was seeing stars. His head wasn't listening to his commands. Before he could get up, Yi Qinghan casually punched him in the chest. Han Mang's body curled up and he spat out a mouthful of essence blood. Yi Qinghan's punch had caused him to spasm. He lay on the ground, twitching non-stop. His whole body was bleeding as if he had been cut by a knife. A large amount of destructive energy poured into his body. Han Mang felt the arrival of death. "Don't kill me." Han Mang wailed in horror. He was a high and mighty great teacher of the school of divinity. Even if he went to a divine kingdom, those kings would have to salute and greet him. How could he bear to die? "I'll fulfill your wish. Then I'll kill you." Yi Qinghan's veins bulged. His dragon blood boiled as he transformed into an azure dragon. He punched Han Mang's divine body and pulled out his godhead. Then he threw Han Mang to the star-twisting vine. Chapter 646. After one night, Yi Qinghan distributed a large number of low-grade divine crystals to everyone. He gave out 10 pieces per person, amounting to 10 million low-grade divine crystals. They were grateful. There was no need for these ordinary people to interfere, but they still helped Kuang Manor. Kuang Manor was formed by Kuang Manor, and their original intention was to protect the fruits of their labor. They did not want Kuang Manor to be destroyed. Yi Qinghan did not feel the slightest bit of heartache for giving out so many low-grade divine crystals. Instead, he thanked them again and again for their help. The heroes were excited and refused. They felt that nothing could make them happier than helping Quang Manor tonight. Helping Quang Manor was equivalent to helping themselves. Yi Qinghan resolutely distributed the divine crystals and returned to his manor. The others also returned to the inner sect to cultivate, and the foreign aid personnel were arranged to rest in the private rooms of the auction house. Quang Manor was quiet and peaceful, as if nothing had happened. Everyone in the lawless area, including the Mu Manor, knew that God's organization had sent a large number of experts to besiege Quang Manor. However, not a single one of them left the manor. It was as if they had disappeared. The world was dead silent. Only God's organization and Quang Manor knew how many young and old manor masters God's organization had sent. This time, so many people died, but God's organization could not be angry. After all, their sneak attack on Quang Manor had failed. On the same day, Quang Manor announced that they had been attacked by 12 thieves last night, and all of them had been killed. It was just one sentence, but it sent chills down everyone's spine. Those who could participate in the sneak attack on the Guangzhong and rescue Lin Yi should at least be in the top 15 of the Fengyan list. Most of them should be veteran prefecture lords. There were a total of 12 people, and none of them left alive. How strong was Quang Manor? A bottomless pit. Most people had this adjective to describe Quang Manor at this moment. It was a bottomless pit. No matter how many people they stuffed into it, it would not be able to fill it. God's organization was unusually quiet, but everyone knew that this was the prelude to a storm. Once it erupted, it would be enough to destroy the world and drown Quang Manor. Now, God's organization only needed one reason to act. Lin Yi was swallowed alive by the star-twisting vine and died a miserable death. Quang Manor's revenge was cruel. They did not say that they did not torture the captives. Lin Yi had killed so many innocent people, how could they not torture him? How could they deter the thieves? Ao Jian was killed and his godhead was taken. Only Xuechong was still alive. Quang Manor obtained 12 godheads, 7 godheads and 5 godheads. All of them were handed to the inner sect. Renhuang Yi selected a few people to distribute the godhoods. It was not easy to obtain the godhoods of a manor head. There were a total of 12 godhoods. Xuechong was still alive. Otherwise, there would be 13 godhoods. Gu Qingyu obtained Ao Jian's Sword Dao godhead, Nye Tian and Ji Jingjie obtained Strength godhead, and Di Long Tian obtained Yao Zilong's Space godhead. However, the old mansion master's dual godheads, one of which belonged to the wind and lightning element godhead, and no one in the inner sect was compatible with it. Yi Qinghan was able to control the fusion of wind, lightning, and force laws, but he didn't need them. His own godhead was the best. Di Long Tian looked at the godhead. No one could control it. Suddenly he thought of Yi Feng. Yi Feng controlled the laws of wind and lightning. Since it would be a waste to leave it there, Yi Qinghan agreed to let Di Long Tian send the wind and lightning godhead back to the ancient massacre god and hand it over to Yi Feng. Is. The 3 old men turned pale. Their eyes were burning with anger. They spent more than 1 million high-grade god crystals to buy a piece of useless rock. Damn it! This was definitely sold after it had been used by someone. How dare you play with me? The 3 priests were high and mighty. They had never been played like this. High God Zhong Tian, High God Shen Kuan, and High God Wu Yu. These 3 priests were about the same age as the ancestors of the 3 divine kingdoms. I will go find Sima Sun. How dare he trick me? I will find out who is selling this rock. High God Shen Kuan tore the void and appeared above the West Garrison. West Garrison Lord and the others felt their hair stand on end. They felt like they were being watched by a supreme existence. They walked out of the mansion. Sima Sun felt a sharp pain in his body. He didn't dare to look at High God Shen Kuan. He knew that High God Shen Kuan was here for the God Source. Greetings, my lord. Even West Garrison Lord and Long Shan bowed. They didn't dare to show any disrespect. Shua. Sima Sun was grabbed by High God Shen Kuan. High God Shen Kuan looked down at Sima Sun and said coldly, "Tell me, who gave you this rock?" Sima Sun's forehead was covered in sweat. He said with a trembling voice, "My lord, this is against the rules of the auction house. Is that so?" Do you want the rules or the lives of everyone in the West Garrison? High God Qian Kuan said with a hoarse voice. Sima Sun smiled bitterly. He knew that auctioning this thing would attract trouble. Therefore, he tried to distance himself from it. However, God's organization was too overbearing. Sima Sun was his only way out. Only Sima Sun knew who was auctioning this rock. It's Yi Qinghan of the Crazed Mansion. As long as you complete it, the reward you will receive will not be any less than what you would get if you fought for 10 days in the planar battlefield. What quest? What's the reward? Laughing at the heavens asked calmly. The opponent is a newly risen mansion. Each side will have 100 people, and we can take turns fighting them. If fellow cultivator Zhang Tian leads the members of Team Myth to participate in the battle and kill the mansion lord and the others, God's organization will reward you with 120 top-grade God crystals. Yuan Li looked at Laughing at the Heavens and the others with confidence. Not everyone could refuse top-grade God crystals. For a battle team like theirs, they could only earn 10 top-grade God crystals a day in the planar battlefield. Sometimes, they couldn't even earn that much. More importantly, the planar battlefield was very dangerous. If Team Myth was surrounded by an army, they would be wiped out. 120 top-grade God crystals for 10 days is indeed a good reward, but I have no interest in dealing with a group of children. God's organization is still so despicable, bullying the weak. Friend, I have no interest in talking about missions with you, Laughing at the Heavens coldly refused. He even insulted God's organization. Yuan Li was furious. If someone else had said this, he might have exploded and killed them. However, he didn't have the courage to attack Laughing at the Heavens. Laughing at the Heavens was a member of the younger generation, while Yuan Li was the chief deacon of God's organization. He was already half a step into the realm of greater God. Laughing at the Heavens was ranked first on the mythological plane's reputation list. To this day, no one had been able to shake his position. He was a legend. Although Panga Heaven and Xian Yuan Tian ruled the three heavens with him, they didn't dare say they could last until the end. Although God's organization was powerful, their influence didn't extend to the planar battlefield. Yuan Li couldn't do anything about Laughing at the Heavens humiliating God's organization. In the end, Yuan Li had no choice but to give up. He turned and left without even saying a word of courtesy. Yuan Li then went to Panga Heaven, but he was still rejected. In the end, he went to Xian Yuan Tian and directly raised the price to 200 supreme-grade divine crystals. Xian Yuan Tian led an army, so how could he care about such a small amount of wealth? He still rejected Yuan Li. Yuan Li was helpless. The top 3 on the reputation list were even stronger than the top 3 on the elite list. They had very high standards and didn't care about other people in the mythological plane. They also didn't give face to God's organization. Superintendent Xian Yuan Tian, since you are unwilling to take action, can you recommend a few top-grade experts in your army? I only want the younger generation. Yuan Li took out 10 top-grade God crystals and pushed them into Xian Yuan Tian's hands. He wanted to settle for the next best thing. Xian Yuan Tian accepted them without hesitation, then took out 10 jade tablets and said indifferently, "These 10 people are the strongest of the younger generation in our army. They're comparable to the Manor Lord. They've experienced hundreds of death tribulations and fought thousands of battles with the army. Their murderous aura is enough to force the Manor Lord to retreat. Dealing with a small crazy manor shouldn't be a problem. Go find them and tell them that I sent them, but if you want to take them away, you'll have to pay them handsomely. 10 supreme-grade divine crystals per person per day. If you think it's too expensive, just take the top 5. Yuan Li looked at the jade tokens and saw that the 5 top-grade experts were all in the top 10 of the reputation list. However, he wasn't satisfied. What he needed was someone who could suppress the entire mythological plane. Someone who could suppress anyone in the insane manner with a single move. You're not satisfied? Xian Yuan Tian frowned. If these 10 people were in the mythological plane, they would definitely be invincible. Yuan Li nodded and said, God's organization can find a few dozen of such experts. Including those in the periphery, we have more than 100. However, I need someone like Superintendent Xian Yuantian, someone who can suppress all the top-grade experts. God's organization must be foolproof this time and completely destroy the insane manner. Not a single one of them will be left alive. Xian Yuantian sneered and slowly stood up. His armor flapped in the wind, making him look incomparably majestic. As far as I know, Duanmu Chun and Junzi K, who are ranked first and second on the elite list, are from God's organization, right? Are you unwilling to use them? Or do you not want to expose them? Xian Yuantian looked down at God's organization and sneered. Yuan Li's expression changed, but he quickly regained his composure. Only the higher-ups of God's organization knew about this. No one else knew about this, but Xian Yuantian had inexplicably revealed it. Chapter 650. Xian Yuantian's straightforwardness was too much for Yuan Li to handle, so he revealed God's organization's background. My friend, you must be joking. Duanmu Chun and Junzi K come and go without a trace. How can they be from God's organization? Yuan Li flatly denied their identities. You know very well whether they are from God's organization or not. Since you don't want to use your own people, I can lend you one. He is the death god of my army, the crazy Taoist. His combat power is on par with mine. If the crazy sect is really as you say, he can single-handedly wipe out the entire army. I will lend you 1 month, including the time spent traveling back and forth, for a total of 500 top-grade spirit crystals and 10 million mid-grade god crystals as payment. However, if he dies because of your misinformation, God's organization will have to give me an explanation. Xian Yuantian said coldly. 500 top-grade god crystals was an enormous number. Even a divine kingdom could only store 100,000 top-grade god crystals. Normally, it was impossible for them to use top-grade god crystals. Top-grade god crystals were the favorite of elites and monstrous geniuses. For the sake of a single top-grade god crystal, they would fight until their heads bled. This was especially true in the planar battlefield. Experts from other planes would only have one goal in mind: snatch top-grade god crystals. Yuan Li thought for a moment and nodded in agreement to Xian Yuantian's conditions. Soon, the crazy Taoist was summoned by Xian Yuantian. He was a man who looked unkempt. He was very young, but his beard was unshaven as if he had not bathed for hundreds of years. His robe was also tattered. He really looked like a lunatic. Crazy Taoist, go to the mythical plane to carry out a mission. Once you are done, return to the team immediately. Remember, the goal of this trip is to kill, Xian Yuantian said flatly. Yes, my lord. The crazy Taoist's cold eyes were like cold stars. They could steal one's soul. The aura of death spread out. He had killed countless prefecture lords on the battlefield. Just the murderous aura on his body could scare a lesser god to death. The death god. Not many people dared to use this name on the planar battlefield. He was definitely strong, and his cultivation was only slightly inferior to Xian Yuantian's. After receiving Xian Yuantian's support, Yuan Li paid 300 top-grade god crystals as a deposit and left the planar battlefield with the death god. In the mythological realm, Yi Qinghan still hadn't made any moves. The group of inner sect disciples seemed to have disappeared. Only the army was left standing guard near the southern mountains pass. The crazed manor's territory had been unusually quiet these days, but the no man's land was very active. Powerful elites could be seen everywhere. Chapter 651. The outside of Jinan City was in an uproar. The crazy cultist's background was quickly discovered. He was the first general of Xian Yuantian's Xianyuan army, known as the killing god of the dimensional battlefield. Now, the experts who came to watch the battle believed that Kuang Fu would not last 3 rounds. As long as Xian Yangsu and Yi Qinghan were killed, Kuang Fu would immediately collapse. However, the Holy Dragon Divine Kingdom sent a large number of experts to watch, firmly believing in and supporting Kuang Fu. God's organization and Tian Ke Divine College joined forces to set up a bet on how many rounds Kuang Fu could last. The betting system was set like this. If the insane faction could hold on for 5 rounds and admit defeat, the odds would be 1-1. 5. If they could hold on for 10 rounds, the odds would be 1-3. If they could hold on for 10 to 20 rounds, the odds would be 1-5. If they could hold on for 30 rounds, the odds would be 1-10. If they could last 40 rounds, the odds would be 1-20. From the 50th to the 60th round, the odds were a little exaggerated, directly increasing to 1-30. After the 60th round, the three divine kingdoms did not set the odds. In their opinion, even a fool would not bet on Kwang Fu winning. The Holy Dragon Divine Kingdom firmly believed that Kwang Fu could win, but their actions were very honest. They bet 10 million mid-grade divine crystals that Kwang Fu could last more than 5 rounds. If they could last 20 rounds, they bet another million mid-grade divine crystals. As for the rest, they were not willing to consider. Half of the people bet 10 rounds, and the bets were very big. They all wanted the odds to be 1-3. 1 million mid-grade divine crystals would give them 3 million mid-grade divine crystals. It was very generous, so the bets were more than 3 million high-grade divine crystals. However, more people chose to bet less than 5 rounds, and the bets were 5 million high-grade divine crystals. Some people actually chose to bet their lives and bet more than 20 rounds. Some even bet 30 or 40. However, the total bet was only 10,000 high-grade divine crystals, which was almost negligible. A wretched old man who looked like a madman actually bet that Kwang Fu could last more than 60 rounds. He was really betting his entire fortune, betting 40,000 high-grade divine crystals. If he won, he would get at least 30 times the profit. However, he attracted the laughter of the world. Is the god of gamblers crazy for divine crystals? Where did he get so many divine crystals? Someone recognized him. He was a famous gambler in the mythological plane. Every time he lost, he would lose everything. In any case, he had never won a single gamble in the past few thousand years. He had never won before, but he was crowned as the god of gamblers. It wasn't worth it to offend a superior god priest for 10,000 top-grade spirit crystals. No need. I don't care about these things. The outcome is decided by the heavens. After the old man finished speaking, he gestured for the god of gamblers to support him. The god of gamblers raised his eyebrows and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He didn't refute and instead supported the old man to a mountain peak. "Young man, do you think I can win 1,000,000 top-grade spirit crystals?" The old man squinted at the god of gamblers and revealed a strange smile. "I'm not a young man. I might even be older than your father. Behave yourself." The god of gamblers was slightly angry and wanted to push the old man away. Boom! When the god of gamblers' old hand touched the old man's right arm, the surrounding space trembled. However, it only affected about 10 meters. The others couldn't feel the distortion and rumbling of the laws of space. The old man smiled. He turned his arm and pressed it on the god of gamblers' shoulder. He said calmly, "Since you're here, accompany me and watch. I believe you can win this time." The two of them were secretly exerting their strength. Although it seemed weak, it was actually a force that could sink a mythical realm. The mountain rocks under the god of gamblers' feet were cut open like tofu. The energy was violently raging. An invisible force silently cut open the mountain rocks and flattened the mountain peak. Soon, 2 stone chairs and a stone table appeared. The god of gamblers' face was pale, but the old man's face was also a little gloomy. He secretly exerted force and pressed the god of gamblers onto the chair. "Young man, you're very strong. I can't even breathe." The old man was incomparably calm. He casually waved his hand and summoned many spirit fruits and divine wine. He didn't care about the people below. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.